Hi everyone, happy Friday. Uh, well, hopefully it's happy. It's a little miserable outside, but hey ho, this is England, as they say. If this is your first time joining our Friday Once Club weekly, this is our Ask Anything segment that we run sort of roughly once a month, where it's an opportunity for our attendees and Once Club members to literally ask anything and discuss, even, amongst themselves if they so wish, to, anything with regards to personal shopping, the luxury market, even freelancing to a certain extent. I think there's lots of crossover situations that can be applicable here. And I'm happy to answer some of those questions, although I may not be the major expert, if you will, in certain things. But if there's something that I'm not too sure about, I will always sort of go do my due diligence and always come back to that particular question and address it, whether it's in another live or to the person directly. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to write it in the chat comment. You can direct it to me directly. You can put it in the Q&A. You can also do it anonymously. It's a safe space here. There are no silly questions either. So, if you're starting out, you're looking about maybe having a bit of a career change, or you're looking to do some progression, or this is more client specific, it's broad basically. So please don't feel like no question is off limits. Like I said, if I don't have the exact answer for you, I will get the exact answer for you, or I'm sure one of our other members will also do that as well. So we've actually been getting some questions since we've sort of been promoting the event. So I'm going to start with those questions first, so we can kick off, and that actually you might actually find that kind of triggers something that you want to discuss yourself. So feel free to jump in or to leave your comments or what have you. So one of the things I was getting a lot of questions about was around pricing, fees, and rates, essentially, and that's across the board, from everything from clients, but also working with brands, for example, or other organizations that might want to employ you for your services, whatever that may be. And it's quite broad, and I think there's lots of different ways. There's definitely nothing, there's no right or wrong, but I think there are definitely some things to consider, and I will give you some examples of things that I've done in some very specific ways. So to start off, I will start with sort of working sort of personal shopping situation, which is working directly with clients, as an example, and how to structure those fees, and how to address that as well. Basically, I think one of the first things you need to do is you need to establish where your client is at budget-wise. I think that there's loads of scope to deal with a myriad of different clients. I think some people are still very much of the opinion that personal shopping can be quite exclusive, and is maybe for the 1%, if you will, or for a higher net worth individual. I have dealt with clientele of all different sort of demographics with different budgets, and if we want to put a kind of word on that, we can sort of say everything from high street to couture, and watches is the scope that I've dealt with. And so and that's sometimes also with the same client, so you don't have to necessarily feel that you have to do one type, only high street, only luxury, only couture, only jewelry. I think there's always a scope, especially if you're a very well-rounded personal shopper, as in you are happy to service your clients with almost anything. And if you're the type of shopper that's interested in lots of different categories, or if that's your forte, why not do everything? And I think a lot of clients, regardless of whether they're sort of in a sort of 1% bracket, if you will, I'm using it as an example, I don't think there's anything wrong, you know, that you'll also find that that customer does also like to shop high street or to shop smart. So I think in those, you know, situations, you can offer all your services and make that appropriate. But I think the most thing with pricing and fees is to get a sense of where your client is at budget wise. So, you know, how much are they looking to spend on this particular appointment or request, sourcing, etc., etc. Usually, you know, sometimes personal shopping is more of about supply and demand, and it is more of a, you know, can you find me this, can you help me do this, etc., etc. And with that, I think already comes a certain expectation of they understand what the pricing is. In theory, that's not always the case. So you want to, so if they're sort of making a request and it's, I don't know, for a Dior something, a Chanel something, the idea is that they should have an idea of what that looks like in terms of price points. And from there, you can sort of establish how you're going to work with that client. In those particular situations, I think it's more than reasonable to apply what I would call a sourcing fee, or, you know, an acquiring fee, if you will. And that can be anything. I would say industry standard is typically 10% on those types of sourcing requests and requirements for a luxury brand. It can be more or less. And I think what, you know, when you decide whether or not it should be 10% or more, or if you want to actually apply somewhat of a fee structure, I think it also depends on what type of price points you're looking at. Typically, if you're working maybe anything from £2,000, euros, or dollars and under, 10% might not be that relevant for you, and it might not also equate to time spent. And I think that's really, really important. And I think it's something that actually gets overlooked a lot when it comes to fees and structures, and also from a client perspective. We are in an age now where a lot of the types of clients, especially if they're from a luxury point of view, are very used to having a luxury service that they don't technically pay for. They because they have built up their brand loyalty with a particular boutique, with a particular omni-channel, you know, like a Net-a-Porter and Matches. They all have personal shopping services, and typically the personal shopping services are complimentary, and usually invite only, based on how a client has already spent with that particular organization. So what you want to consider is that when they're coming independent, that sometimes that is not, so essentially what I'm saying is the time there is baked into the service, because that's what they have endeavored to provide for that particular customer. Now, when you're individual, you have to really account for your time, and you have to make sure that you make that client aware. You know, sometimes sourcing items, especially if you're dealing internationally, if you're trying to find, you know, multiple sizes, multiple looks, hard to get pieces, requires a lot of time, a lot of being savvy, being connected. And I think that you have to factor that in. So sometimes 10% actually doesn't really equate to that time. And so you have to make sure that you're, you know, if you're spending 3 to 5 days on a particular project for a client, that's accounted for. And if that item maybe, let's say, is £200, but it's taken you 2 weeks to find it, and you've exhausted all your contacts, your resources, you know, etc., etc., for a £200 item, 10% is definitely not worth that. So I think having a fee structure in mind, you know, with a threshold, is quite industry standard as well. And I would definitely advise to use that type of structure. Also, you want to factor in, are you charging your client for shipping or not? If you're not, then your fees should definitely sort of be reflective of that as well. If you're happy and your client is also happy to kind of absorb the cost with shipping, which is quite, again, standard. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. It's about also making sure that you make that really clear to them, what they're responsible for and what you're responsible for as well. And then it's about you really then being able to deliver. So I would definitely also say within that is, with that communication, is to under promise, over deliver every time, so that, and manage your clients' expectations. If you're doing bigger projects, or you're working with a much higher price point or threshold, so that could be, maybe you're doing an actual personal shopping appointment, so that might be over a few hours, a few days. You might have to factor in catering here as well. I think that you most definitely can, again, base it on a 10% structure, or slightly more, if you think that that requires that. What I would take into consideration, if it's a client that you don't know well, or are sort of just figuring out, really do your research if you can. I think really get an idea of who you're dealing with beforehand, because what you don't want to have happen is that you do a huge, appointment with a client and they buy nothing, which means that you've kind of gone above and beyond to source items, pick up, to put the work in. Again, it's down to that time element, and you won't have anything to show for it. In those cases as well, I also do find that if you are really looking to do a 10% fee structure, and when I say 10%, it's 10% of what their final sale is. So you might be pulling from multiple different boutiques, omni-channels, maybe doing some loans first, independent brands, etc. And then they might sort of pay for those items directly, and then you take out a 10%. There's a 10% levy on whatever that total is. I think that's reasonable, but what you might want to do is set up a deposit structure that is refundable against their final purchase, and non-refundable if they don't purchase anything. That way, at least your time on the very basis of it has been secured. And I think it's also important to note here that sometimes you may feel, if you're very established, if you already have a really great client base that you're looking into, that you can have a slightly lower fee structure with your clientele, or none at all, based on that you might be working as an affiliate with several different boutiques. Knowing that, as an example, if you work with a Net-a-Porter or a Matches, I'm not too sure if they do consignment anymore. I've got a feeling that they don't, but if they do, what you can sort of do is you can actually use, instead of using a fee from your client, you know that you're going to be getting a commission kickback from that particular boutique, and so therefore, again, your time's accounted for. But again, this also really does come down to the idea that the client is definitely going to take something, and it doesn't matter how good of a personal shopper you are. Sometimes that, sometimes there's no sale, it's no bueno. So and there's just nothing worse than when you know that you've put in loads of time, especially if you've used a lot of your expenses with catering, for example, to provide like lunch, depending on what type of day you're having with that client. If you've had to pay for sweets, if you've had to pay for, actual personal shopping sweets, or a place for them to be able to kind of have this appointment. Not everyone wants to go into store. Yeah, you want to make sure that you've really factored that in. And I would say having a structure, having a idea of what you're happy to sort of be paid for your time, and then everything else can sort of go on top of that, I think is absolutely fair. And I don't think that a client would feel that that was outrageous. Now, if you're dealing with a slightly, what should I say, a client that's on the sort of lower spend threshold, 10% for them might not be feasible for you. It might not be sort of worth it in, again, the time and effort, because regardless of whether you're doing luxury or high street, the effort and that goes into that preparation and the time is the same. So, but the spend is lower, and that's okay. So what you might want to do is have a set structure for, a high street to contemporary thresholds price point, and knowing that there's always a standard set price that you do with that particular client, or with that particular structure. And I think that's reasonable. And I think what you'll have to think about there is that if they're looking at a high street sort of hall or based appointment, you have to sort of figure out what that pricing looks like at that on that high street level. So you might have a client that loves Zara. You should have an idea of what the pricing looks like at Zara to be able to kind of say, okay, for me to be able to spend 2 to 3 hours with you based on this type of budget, this is what I think is a fair amount of time. And again, I think, and again, it's sometimes it will find that customers aren't able to do that. But then I would also say then, which is also okay, but then I would also maybe say that there's an education around that piece of them understanding how your time works and how it works in terms of you getting the right outfits, and then also what they're getting out of it, to really give them the context. At the end of it, you're going to have 3 to 5 looks perhaps. I'm going to help you style all of those looks head to toe, but then also give you additional options within those pieces. It could be a capsule wardrobe, it could be a summer wardrobe. If it's one look, then a one look personal shopping appointment might look very different to a 5 look personal shopping appointment. But it's really down to you to really work out those details, put them down on paper, and then have a structure that you're happy to go with. And that being said, there always may be a time when you go, okay, I can do a little bit less for this client, we can negotiate, we can figure out a way, but have your own structure in mind, feel really good about it, because you know that your time is worth it, and that you also know that you can deliver with those parameters. And I think that once you have that 1 appointment, 2 appointments, clients will really respect it, because you've kind of managed their expectations, you've told them exactly what they did, and they've actually got value for money. And what, more still, yes, they might have spent more than what they would do if they'd gone to the store themselves, but what's probably not going to happen is that they're going to be dealing with returns, or not feeling confident about styling those pieces later down the line. You know how it is sometimes with a lot of clients, they buy things that they never wear because they love it in the store, or they love it in theory, and then they don't know what to do with it at home. What you're bringing to the table is someone to give them the advice, give them the inspiration, and you can actually work with them on a much more personal basis, because you can sort of say, what do you have in your wardrobe already? What are your favorite pieces? Let me make sure that I'm bringing you pieces that work with your existing life, not trying to put my opinion or my personal taste onto you. It's really about the client. And I think at the end of the day, even if they've never done that type of appointment before, or maybe they weren't too sure about how the pricing is, they'll always be pleasantly surprised with the result, which will ensure that they come back, and even better still, refer you out to a friend and really show you that this is the value that I got. And so you won't have to be justifying. I think that's a lot of it. You do feel you have to justify your pricing a lot of the time. You shouldn't have to do that once you've had those types of appointments, because you've been able to deliver with what you said within a really fair price point, and they're really happy. And then, that customer happiness will be the proof in the pudding of why that pricing structure exists, for sure. In terms of other types of pricing you might want to consider, I won't spend too long on it, but you might be doing a lot of online styling. I think that should also be taken into consideration as doing a physical appointment. It's not the same thing, because you're not necessarily doing a store. You have a lot less overheads to worry about, but the theory of time principles exactly the same. So you might want to have a personal shopping in-person appointment at a slightly higher price, and then for a online type of styling recommendation type appointment, you can have at a slightly lower price, because you're not actually having to go anywhere, or like I said, travel, for example, doesn't really need to be an issue. So you can absolutely have that. But again, always, always, always consider your time. It's so important. And it's important that the client understands that it's about time and effort used, not about just the end product of having pieces that they're going to purchase. Other types of pricing that I've also been asked about is like editorial or red carpet. It's really hard to figure out what that looks like. But my experience is I've dealt with everything from independent men and women who need something red carpet or editorial, and it's very much them deciding how much they're happy to spend, how much they're happy to work with. And then I've also been dealing with Warner Brothers and Fox Studios as so technically they're the ones who are paying me, not the talent. So I'm working with the talent, we are agreeing, but they don't have any control over what the budget is. The idea is that I suppose they are given a budget of what they're allowed in terms of for their marketing and promotional expectations for that particular movie, that particular TV program. And that is baked into their pay to a certain extent. So they're not all their expenses, if you will. So what they normally have is a set amount of what they're willing to spend per actor, actress, per film, and per country. So I was dealing with a particularly high profile actor, and I dealt with several studios whilst dealing with him, and every time I did that I had to renegotiate. Now we did some pieces in Canada and in LA, and I had a very different fee structure to what I was able to charge for it being in London, which would count as international, whereas Canada and America to them is domestic. So, and it usually also means that they're dealing with way more talent at one time for film festivals, for example. So the budget changes drastically than compared to if it's a movie premiere, as an example, or a movie promotion. So I found that was wildly there was a huge contrast. So my advice there is, whilst not to say this is how much it should be, try and get their bottom line first. They're always going to ask you for your bottom line. I would try and get their bottom line first. Again, take into consideration of time and how many looks that they want you to do, and where those looks are going to be published. You know, what socials, what red carpet, what paparazzi. It makes a difference. You know, if it's a very high profile event, a televised event, that's very different to essentially a private fundraiser, for example, that they might want to be dressed for. So you have to absolutely take that into consideration. Sorry, let me just charge my laptop. So yes, and you know, so have a rate in mind. There's nothing wrong with that, and thinking, you know, ask around some of your peers what they've been charging so you have an idea, but factor in time. If this is something that you're mainly doing and this is your full-time job, think about what you would expect as a full-time salary. Maybe you're not doing it on a Monday to Friday, but the work is way more intense. They're expecting you to travel. Usually they'll expect you to take care of your own expenses as well, which means tailoring. And if you're working with brands or showrooms that can't offer you complimentary tailoring, that comes out of your budget. Factor in your travel, factor in your food as well, you know, lunch, and then think about what that looks like in terms of the salary that's going to support you for that month, that 2 weeks, what have you. And then go back, and then I would say garnish that a little bit, because give yourself a buffer. They like to negotiate, especially the studios, and so have an idea of what you're happy with. I would then say, see what you would really like, go with that, and then if they have to come down, then you have to come down, but you're not coming down in a place that you're not happy with, because you have that kind of threshold of what you are happy with. Now, sometimes you'll have an opportunity that is way off in terms of your expectations, but you feel that the payoff is better. And I think there it comes down to gut. So in that situation, I would say go with your gut, see what you want. If you think that the pay, you know, it's going to help you get more clients, more exposure, if that's what you're really interested in, but it wasn't the best of pay. And then also think about how much you want to extend in terms of time. Again, if the value hasn't been there within the fee because they just don't have the budget, but you think the payoff is good, you can also manage your time, you know, effectively to make sure that you're not overextending yourself for a fee that you're not happy with. And I think you always want to know your self-worth and know that it's okay to ask for what you're asking, but also know that it might not always be possible, and that's okay. Sometimes you have to walk away from projects because you can't do the work and sort of expect for that particular month to make it work. Sometimes it just doesn't work. Maybe it's the next time. But be respectful, be honest. Try to be transparent, I think, with your expectations and managing the talent's expectations or the studio's expectations. And I think you'll always find the happy medium. I don't think it's definitely not something that I always feel extremely comfortable with, but I had to get really comfortable really quick. And you have to start learning about how to apply for certain, especially if you work international, there's a whole different tax situation you have to look into for that. So do your research and then make sure that you feel that you can do the job and you can deliver on that job. And if you're ever in that situation, you're not sure if this is too low or too high, you know, I always say be confident and say to them, this is my bottom line. Where can you meet me here? And if not, you know, if they can, they can. And if they can't, that they really can't. And then maybe that's just not the job for you this time. Maybe, you know, you'll meet up with them another time, and that's okay as well. And in another part conversation that I had with regards to pricing, it was just for doing like freelance consulting, and someone had asked if they're being asked advice, is that the same as saying to them at what stage should they be talking about fees? In the short one, it's a bit of a hard one to know, but I think that how I sort of usually do it, I always do a phone call. The phone call is all, you know, an introductory phone call, if you want to call it that, or an exploratory conversation. That way you can sort of establish what they are asking. Sometimes it's a 10-minute conversation. It's just a very quick thing. And, you know, maybe you don't have to charge for a 10-minute consultation. But if it's something that you think is going to be ongoing, or that they're looking for you to do some extra, you know, digging, or if they want you to use your network, your services, etc., then I think it's absolutely fair to say, I would love to support you with XYZ. This is how I would like to move forward as a return on investment. I think that if you're, again, expected to kind of do work and time, I think it's absolutely fair to expect an ROI, and you can, again, go to them and say, does this work for you? And sometimes it might, and sometimes it won't. If you really believe in the project and think it might be something down the line you can do, it's down to you to kind of trust your gut and to see if that makes, you know, sense, if you will, for you right now, and if it's something that you feel comfortable with. And I think that's the best you can do for right now. And I always try to ask around some colleagues, you know, use your ŌNCE Club network, if you will, to kind of gauge, does this pricing make sense to you, or what would you expect, or what have you done in the past? Because that might be right for them, but it might not be right for you. But having a sense of what's going on in the market will help you frame where you should be and what you're going to feel comfortable for, as well, which I think is really important. So there you go. That went on for a little bit longer than I expected. We have time for another question. So mostly just talking about acquisition in this case. I think, and when I say acquisition, I mean finding new clients. Someone asked, how do you go about finding new clients to work with, and how do you approach them? There's so many different ways. I think word of mouth is a really, really, is probably your best bet in terms of finding new clientele. I think that you can really tap into your network already. get other people, you know, even if they're not necessarily looking for your services or using your services, you know, who are your friends, who do your friends work with, your family, do they might even just happen to have bumped into someone. Let them know what you're doing and what you're trying to do, and that you're looking for you know, clients, and give them an idea of what you do and how you do it, and then sort of hopefully, you know, let that marinate a little bit. And I'm sure there's always a way that they go, oh, actually this person might be interested, etc., etc. I used to find a lot of clients because I used to do a friend or a cousin or a friend of a friend or a cousin of a friend, what have you, and then their friend might be interested, and then their sister might be interested, and so I would sort of build a client base that way. I think you can also be savvy and look around when you're doing your own personal, I don't know, shopping. I've been in Mes before, for example, and anyone who's had experience with Ms, you wait a lot. So whilst I was waiting, I realized that there was a couple of, you know, very stylish women who were also waiting for a very long time. I think we've both been in the store for around an hour at this stage. The things we do for Birkins, I guess. And I was looking over them, and I wasn't eavesdropping, but I could sort of tell that they were you know, a typical type of spender. You know, I've been doing it a long time, so I kind of, you know, picked up on the cues, and I gave them a card, and I just said, listen, I know that this is always a difficult process with Hermes. If you'd like to work with someone where I can sort of support you with that outside of retail, please give me a call. And it worked, and they did call. They were happy to chat, they were happy to converse, and we still keep in contact today. And that was just me sort of waiting around in Ms. I was trying to use my time effectively, and you can do that sometimes in Selfridges and what have you. And you know, I don't think you should go around looking for clients and poaching those clients because they might be on appointments. But I think if there's a sense of opportunity there, if you want to you know, don't be afraid to kind of be observing and sort of seeing what's going around with you, because sometimes the opportunity might just be there at the right time. It definitely helps, I think, in these days to have a little business card. If you're not too sure how to approach it, you can just say, this is what I do, I think you have great style, if you ever need something, please give me a call. And you can sort of keep it very short and sweet. And nowadays, I think so much of us are also on social media that I think also there's great ways to connect with that type of audience, and you know, promote yourself if this is what you're doing full time or even part time. Promote yourself in terms of your services. You know, Instagram is a great tool, I personally believe, is because it allows you to create stories, and it allows you to really showcase who you are and what you do in a really natural way. You know, emails are tough to read. Cold calling is tough. So when you're doing social media, you're able to show a little bit of yourself, show your personality, and show, you know, your abilities, your skill set. So being able, and that doesn't necessarily mean, you know, you have to do TikTok reels and do changes and stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that either. Sometimes it's a case of just being able to connect with that audience and let them know what you're doing, how you're doing it. You know, grid posts, doing some video, talking about it with other colleagues, for example, these are all really strong ways to kind of sell yourself without selling yourself, and selling your type of identity and how you do it. So beautiful imagery. You know, there's some shoppers I know that are very good at selling what have you, but sometimes their social media in terms of getting new clients isn't necessarily how they get new clients, because it's just flat imagery, etc. But if you're creating something that they aspirational, something that they want to learn more about, you know, and that's video, you know, using the boomerang type, what do you call that? The boomerangs on stories. You can use all these different techniques to kind of make things look exciting, make things look, you know, multi-dimensional, so that they're kind of like, oh, I want to know more about that, I want to see more of that. Having a point of view, things that, you know, brands you love, brands that you don't love, pieces you love, pieces you don't love. That's also a great way to kind of get a sense of your taste levels and how you work with your clients in there as well. And that is a really great way. And then once you kind of have built that type of identity for yourself, you can start working with individuals, or interacting and engaging with individuals who you think that you might want to work with. And, you know, cold DMs and sort of approaches are great, but really try to build up a rapport. You know, it's making actual real comments. You know, likes are great, but comments on their post, comments on their DMs, and trying to build up a sense of, you know, the more that you're sort of being shown to be interested in them, the more likely they're going to be intrigued by you also. And then, you know, you can naturally, hopefully, have a conversation because you've actually been looking, you've sort of seen a certain perspective of their life, small as it may be, on social media, and you can, there's something there that you can connect with them on that. You know, look through their imagery, look through what they're posting, what they're talking about, what's important to them, if you can get a sense of that, and relate with them on that side to bring them into, you know, your business and what you do, and how you do it. And I think regardless of, even if you're within an organization or you're completely independent, I think the rules are, I think all those kind of principles are the same. I think even if, when I was within organizations and I needed to attract new clients, or maybe I had clients that I hadn't really been able to engage with, I started to really sort of see if I could interact with them on, you know, meet them where they are. You know, if they, you know, this was a time when social media was just starting to become useful, I should say, in that way. So in that sense, I would sort of see if they are on social, sort of see what they're talking about. I would test a lot of product with them as well. You know, the beauty of being within an organization is that their details are already there for you, so you don't have to sort of worry about how you're contacting them, but how you use that information, I think, is really key. And you should want to try different things. Look at what they've purchased before, look at what is coming out now, and see if you can find something that they wouldn't normally go for, or things that you definitely think they will go for because of, you know, past purchase history, and connect with them on that. Show them something new. If you're not getting much back from a particular customer, try a bunch of different things, because maybe what they've bought before isn't just limited to what they are going to buy in the future. I used to always have a lot of clients who might only buy certain things with me because they actually didn't know what else I could service them with. So once I started showing them, by the way, did you know I can service this particular brand or this particular category? Sometimes it was kids wear, for example, and they'd be like, oh, I didn't know you did kids wear. I would actually love, and we actually built a relationship off of something new, as opposed to what they had purchased in the past. So testing your categories or different pieces and items, you know, with that client will absolutely help. And, you know, sometimes it will be a case of, you might even get a reply that says, I'm not interested in that. What I would say to that is an opportunity to find out what they are interested in. So don't be disheartened sometimes that you might not be hitting the right mark the first time, the second time, the third time. Use it as an opportunity that they at least bothered to come back to you, so you can actually have a dialogue and go, okay, great. What is it that you think you might be interested in? Is there something that you're missing that I haven't been able to show you yet? Is there something that you've missed out on that I maybe be able to help you with? Really sort of dive into how you can be of service to them. Imagine, you know, don't limit yourself with the possibilities. I mean, this is probably more so for an independent shopper, because, you know, if you work within a ready-to-wear organization, you know, you can do what you can do. That being said, you can always try to go above and beyond, and you don't have to let them know at the time that's what you're trying to do. So again, it's that kind of under promise, over deliver. But what you can do is show them, if you are able to deliver, I took something that you said, I thought, let me try and do XYZ for you. It's paid off. We can now access this item or this brand, or, you know, we can do a custom order because, you know, you're a great client. And, you know, without them having to ask you for it or for them to expect it, you've actually done something amazing. And from then, you know, you could have gone from a client that you might not have worked with forever, or a client that you thought had potential that you wanted to try and approach. All of a sudden, world's your oyster, and, you know, they want to know more about what you do and how you can help them, because they weren't expecting, you to help them in that way. And so it always pays off. And I think that, and, you know, and the more you're able to kind of service your clients in that way, anticipate their needs, the more you'll always be able to acquire new clients, because they'll start recommending you. And I always think that recommendations from a client to a new client is a you know, outside of, you know, a great spend, is the key to kind of knowing that you're doing the right thing and you're going in the right direction, because they are. And sometimes actually you know, I've had a few clients who say, I don't want to share you because I don't want you to split the time. But sometimes you know, despite this, I'll have clients sort of say, I really want to, you know, tell my friends about XYZ, but maybe not you, you can recommend someone else. But they really enjoy the service and they really think that other people will benefit from said service. And I think anytime you're getting those types of recommendations to acquire new clients is a really, it's a kind of feather in your cap, if you will, to say, oh, okay, I'm on the right track here, I'm doing the right thing with those types of clients. And finally, I think always just be able to kind of be open to networking. It might not be the thing that you love to do. I think sometimes networking can be really hard, depending on the event, depending on where you are, depending, you know, sometimes it's not easy to kind of be in a particular environment where maybe you're a guest or you've been sort of a +1, and you're kind of trying to get into an inner circle. But I think if you're able to have natural conversations and you build a rapport with someone that you meet at these networking events, this is where, again, it's really key to be able to kind of secure something else with them. So whether it's, you know, hey, here's my card, keep in contact, or ask them if they have a card, I'd love to keep in contact with you. It might sound a bit Gen Z, but, you know, asking them if, what, you know, are you on Instagram, are you in LinkedIn, can I find you somewhere, I'd love to chat with you another time. You don't have to sell your business at the time unless they've asked. It could just be a case of, hey, I'd love to connect with you another day. Let's go for a coffee. So you're kind of just building up a rapport. It doesn't have to feel super salesy. I think you can, especially if you found the connection, if you're there to purposely just do the networking and things, I think they'll, you know, people are smart and they kind of know that they're being sold to or what have you. So I think, you know, really focus on finding a connection, building some rapport, and then seizing the opportunity on that, as opposed to trying to just seize opportunities despite who they are. I don't think these types of relationships ever really get to flourish, because there's always that sense of, oh, you wanted something from me, even if maybe it paid off. I don't know if you always find the most natural rhythm. So, you know, create some connections, have, you know, always just be open to having those connections, I suppose. Ask questions and see where it goes. You know, sometimes, you know, I've been to events and I haven't been able to really connect with anyone, and that's okay. But then I might go to another event and I might have a conversation with one person, but that one person I spent, you know, half my evening speaking with them, because we had lots to talk about, we had lots to connect, and they become, you know, either a great friend or a great client. Either way, you know, sometimes this is how it happened. But, you know, the difference is that the nature of that relationship feels a lot more genuine and authentic, rather than something that feels very forced and kind of, you know, quid pro quo. So yes, that's basically it. But that is our time for Ask Anything. I hope you found, you know, the information helpful, or if you have any comments on the information that I've given or want some follow-up, please feel free to send me a message, send an email. You can write on the platform or any of the social medias that we promote on, like LinkedIn or Instagram. And because we would love to hear, I would always love to hear from you. Or if you disagree with something that I've said, or you have more to say on something I said, please come through so we can discuss it and go from there, basically. But I hope you have an amazing Friday. If you're in London, I'm sorry about the rain, it's terrible, but I'll see you again soon. Bye guys.